गुरुदेवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः. Okay. In Sugama, we were discussing on the 54th point. We were discussing in that how Sakshi is superimposed upon the Anatma. Because the problem, the doubt arises on account of this fact that anything that is superimposed is going to be false. Anything superimposed is going to be false. So, if Sakshi is superimposed upon Anatma, then the problem would be Sarva Mithyatva Prasakte. Anatma is anyway Mithya, but if Sakshi also becomes Mithya, because Sakshi is also Adhyasta. Why? Because Anyonya Adhyasa. Bhashyakara says, Atma Anatmanoho mutual Adhyasa, Paraspara Adhyasa. On account of this, if Sakshi, that is Adhyasta upon the Atma, is Mithya, then what happens? If Sakshi becomes Mithya, Shunyavada Prasangaha, there will be an unwanted situation. Unwanted situation of Sakshi being Mithya. For this he says, Ivattu yenu Guruvar allave? Yeah, today is Sugama only. Correct, I am correct. I thought seeing some people, today must be Paribhasha. No, today is Sugama only. So, nacha sakshinopi adhyastatve sarva mithyatva prasakte shunyavada prasangaha. Purvapakshi told, then there would be, we would land in shunyavada. To this, Siddhanti's reply is beautiful. This is very important, we have to learn. There are two things. Sakshi in its state as Adhyasta upon the Anatma. Anatma means Aham Pratyaya, Pramatrutvam, subject. The Sakshi, that is consciousness, when it is Adhyastam upon the Anatma, that Adhyasta Amsha, let it be Mithya, but the real Sakshi is not Mithya. Therefore, when Anatma is superimposed upon the Atma, entire Anatma is Mithya. Because Anatma doesn't exist apart from superimposed condition. Anatma, that is Aham Pratyaya, mind, Aham Pratyaya, mind, sense organs, body and the world, this entire thing. All this Anatma is superimposed Adhyasta upon the Atma, and Anatma has no existence apart from Adhyasa. That's an interesting thing. Anatma has no existence apart from being Adhyasta. Therefore, in the absence of Adhyasa, Anatma ceases to be there. Let it be. If Anatma doesn't exist, doesn't matter. But what about the Sakshi? If Sakshi is also superimposed upon Anatma, then in the absence of Adhyasa, that is when there is no Adhyasa, then Sakshi ceases to exist. To this Siddhanti says, no. Sakshi has got two states, two aspects. One is an Adhyasta one, another is Anadhyasta and real one. The Sakshi, that Sakshi, which is Adhyasta, may be Mithya. Which is Adhyasta, let it be Mithya. But the Sakshi which is Anadhyasta. So there is a two aspect of Sakshi. Sakshi which is Adhyasta and Sakshi which is not Adhyasta, which is real. That is always real, because this point we have already discussed before. We have already discussed I think, should we say that? I think we will discuss later in Vivarana. There is going to be Purapaksha. Anyway, I touched the topic, so I'll let me say a little bit. Sakshi, we have to accept Sakshi as an Adhyasta. So two things here. One is an Adhyasta aspect of the Sakshi. Another is Anadhyasta, real Sakshi, real Atma. Why we should accept that Sakshi has got one aspect which is Adhyasta? Because one is Bhashyakara says clearly. Bhashyakara openly says that Sakshi is Adhyasta, that's all. Sarva Sakshini. No. Sakshi is, no, what did he say? Sarva Sakshinamapi ahankaradishu aham pratyayadishu adhyasyati. Bhashyakara directly says Sarva Sakshi is Adhyasta, one thing. He doesn't put any adjective. Okay? And second thing is, Purapakshi, that is Vyakhyanakaras told, Sakshi is not directly Adhyasta. See, Sakshi is not directly Adhyasta, but only Sakshi's connection is Adhyasta. Means Anatma comes close to it, that's all. Only its connection is Adhyasa. Sakshi is not Adhyasa. This is what they call in Sanskrit Samsrishtataya, Samsarga. Atma's Adhyasa upon the Anatma is Samsarga. You can read all Vyakhyanakaras. You talk to any Vyakhyana Vedantin, Panchapadika, Vivarana, Anandagiri and all those people. They all of them uniformly talk of this thing. Sakshi's Adhyasa is only Samsarga. Sakshi's Adhyasa is not real. Sakshi is not directly Adhyasta upon the Anatma, they say. So, to this we say, but Swamiji replied already, to this is not true. One is, it goes against Bhashyakara's express statement. Second point is, it is against Anubhava. In our Anubhava, nobody feels that, you don't feel that Sakshi is not Adhyasta. But in the Aham Pratyaya feels that I am a Sakshi. The Sakshi is openly Adhyasta upon Aham Pratyaya. Sakshi is imposed upon the mind. You take mind to be real. Do you feel that mind is not real? Mind is real. Antakarana is real. Deha is real. World is real. We all take world is an existing world. Don't we see that this world is existing, this book is existing, body is existing. Do you feel that body is not existing? Body is existing, we feel. Because body's Atma's existence is imposed upon the body. Atma's existence, Atmanaha Satyatvam. Atma's Satyatvam is superimposed upon the Aham Pratyaya. Therefore, Pramatrutvam is taken to be real. And in your Anubhava, you see that Sakshi is totally imposed upon the Anatma, and you don't feel that I am related to body, I am close to body, I am close to Antakarana. Nobody feels. Nobody feels that I am not Does anybody feel that I am not Antakarana, but I am with Antakarana? Does anybody say? I am not Aham Pratyaya, but I have Aham Pratyaya. Does anybody feel? See, I have Aham Pratyaya. I am not Aham Pratyaya. Does anybody feel? I am Aham Pratyaya is everybody's experience. Then, according to the experience, we have to accept that Sakshi is really imposed. Then the question already answered. The question was that if Sakshi is also imposed upon Anatma, then Sakshi would be Mithya. True. That aspect of Sakshi which is imposed, it is Mithya, but the Sakshi which is unimposed, okay, that means Sakshi has two aspects. One is an imposed aspect, another is unimposed. This point Vyakhyanakaras missed. This you find only in Swamiji. In Satchidanandendra Swamiji's writings alone, in his teachings alone you find this. And and other Vyakhyanakaras, they miss it. All of them say Sakshi is only samsarga, only connection, contact is superimposed. Sakshi is not superimposed. If that was the case, everybody should experience that. But our experience doesn't support it. Our experience doesn't support the Vyakhyanakaras' explanation, and moreover it goes against our experience. If you go by Vyakhyana, see, therefore Vyakhyanakaras' explanation is more logical. They are trying to use logic to explain Adhyasa. That is the biggest mistake. Adhyasa need not be explained through logic. Adhyasa is a matter of Anubhava. When it is a matter of Anubhava, leaving out Anubhava, why do you try to give logical explanation to it? This is a big bane on Hindu society, where in spite of such a great Shankaracharya, we have ended up becoming too much of logical, ignoring Anubhava, setting aside the Anubhava, trying to give a logical explanation to what is a matter of experience. It is boring. It unnecessarily complicates the issue. All these things we know them. Unnecessary, you keep on indulging in logic, which goes against Anubhava. And in spite of your logical explanation, it doesn't convince, because it goes against experience, and the logic doesn't appear to be true. It looks like you are stretching unnecessarily and using unnecessarily too much of logic, ignoring the Anubhava. What is Anubhava? Naturally take it. That becomes easy to understand. That's why Vedanta, unfortunately, Swamiji would say it, and even I felt it. Vedanta, unfortunately, has become another branch of Tarka Shastra. After post-Shankarites, in the hands of post-Shankarites, Vedanta has become another branch of Tarka Shastra. It ceased to be Vedanta. Instead, it became a Tarka Shastra only. Do people know this? People, in fact, we have got unnecessary fascination for Tarka. But Vedanta is not Tarka. They made it into unnecessary Tarka Shastra. That's why Vedanta became more complicated. And then because of complication, there are many other implications. I tell you, it becomes very difficult. Some of the commentators, some, not all, they told that Tarka Shastra is inevitable, Tarka Mimamsa, in order to understand Vedanta. Therefore, women and Shudra who have not studied Tarka Shastra, Mimamsa, Vyakarana and all that, they are not qualified for Vedanta. They went up to this extent of rejecting the qualification, rejecting the adhikaritva of certain people who have not studied Tarka and Mimamsa. That's because they thought that Vedanta is nothing but another branch of Tarka and Mimamsa. But it is not. Vedanta is a simple, straight Anubhava Shastra. It is a Vichara Shastra, not Tarka Shastra. Vedanta is a Vichara. Vichara means observation. Observing what? Observing your Anubhava. Why should it become so difficult to observe our Anubhava? Why should it become unnecessary logic? Even now it is so boring to study Vedanta, because they made it too much of logic. They made it into a unnecessary Tarka Shastra. In fact, Swamiji would call it Tarka Karkasha Vedanta. I don't know how to translate into English. Tarka Karkasha Vedanta. Vedanta became very hard, unpalatable. Hard, unpalatable due to what kind of logic? Tarka Karkasha. Tarka Karkasha Tarka means, how do you say? Karkasha Tarka. I think hard logic? No, not hard. Karkasha. Hard to hear. I don't know how to translate it. Tarka Karkasha. Karkasha means it has become a very hard to hear. It's not pleasant to hear. Complicated, unintelligible, taxing your mind. This is called Karkasha. Karkasha Vedanta, Tarka Karkasha means The logic is too complicated, taxing your mind unnecessarily. Tarka Karkasha Vedanta. It is the logic of Vedanta. Vedanta has been rendered too much of logic that it becomes complicated, difficult to understand, unpalatable, unintelligible. That is better. It is unintelligible, complicated, unintelligible, taxing your mind, stressing, creating stress on your mind. Therefore, Vedanta has entered, has merged with Tarka Shastra, became another branch of Tarka Shastra. We have been discussing, do you ever find my Vedanta talks very difficult to understand? We are touching directly Anubhava. We are not using that Karkasha Tarka. Karkasha Tarka means complicated, unintelligible, how to say that at time, complicated, unintelligible, pressurizing, stressing. It stresses your mind. So I can't translate in one word. Karkasha. Probably those who are good at English might do. My English is very poor because I have studied in Telugu medium. I'm not a scholar of English. What little I know is very, very little. Very little English, very superficial. That's why my English anybody can understand. Anybody who studied up to 10th class can easily understand. Even my English is also up to 10th class level only. Okay. So therefore, Tarka Karkasha Vedanta, Swamiji would say that. All this because simple reason. The people who have studied Vedanta, they first went to Tarka Shastra, Mimamsa, having mastered Tarka Mimamsa, that too complicated Tarka. We call them Navina Tarka. They call them Navina Tarka, means Navya Tarka, Navina Tarka, whatever you call. Navina Nyaya. Navina Nyaya is highly complicated logic. What is that complicated logic? Even to tell, I tell you, I have to prepare and tell you. If you want to know what is complicated Tarka, I can't give you example because I have not studied that Tarka. I studied a simple Tarka Shastra which existed in Shankaracharya's time. In 10th century, in 10th century, the new Tarka started. Shankaracharya lived in early 9th century. So just 1 century after Shankaracharya, this Navina Tarka started. 1 century after Shankaracharya, Navina Tarka started. Therefore, Panchapadika talks of simple. Bhamati also in a way simple. But Bhamati uses somewhat Mimamsa Shastra. That's why it becomes a little complicated. And a partly Tarka also. And next to Bhamati, then it has entered into only Tarka Shastra. All Vedanta has entered into Tarka Shastra. It becomes very difficult. So, Tarka Shastra is, the basic thing of Tarkas is Lakshana and Pariksha. I don't know, if you have studied Tarka Shastra, you would understand what I am telling. Lakshana means you give a definition and examine the definition. First you define through the language of Tarka. Then after defining, you examine the Tarka through another again Tarka. Abba, it becomes a highly complicated, boring and disgusting. Disgusting it is. Vedanta becomes. Okay, so we leave it. We will not enter into it much. Therefore, you see, Shunyasyapi. Now, Purvapakshi told, Atma will become Shunya. If Sakshi is Adhyasta upon the Aham Pratyaya, upon the subject, if Sakshi is imposed upon the subject, that means we are taking Sakshi as a subject alone. Don't we take? In waking state, Sakshi is subject. Subject means individual Jiva. In dream also, Sakshi is Atma is subject. And in Sushupti there is no subject, yet we imagine that there is subject, because Sakshi is imposed upon the Anatma, and we take Sakshi as only Anatma. Sakshi doesn't exist independent of Anatma at all. We don't see that. Therefore, if Sakshi did not exist independent of Adhyasa, then what happens? One is, your Anubhava would not have been there. Second, Nissakshikasya Adhyasasyaiva Siddhe. If Sakshi was also Mithya, that means if there was no Paramarthika Sakshi, real Sakshi, if the real Sakshi were not there, then Adhyasa would not exist. See, if Sakshi comes into existence in the wake of Adhyasa, see the point. If Sakshi comes into existence in the wake of Adhyasa, then before Adhyasa, Sakshi were not there. Isn't it? Then the Sakshi were not there, real Sakshi would not be there, then nobody would know Adhyasa. Adhyasa would not take place. And nobody would know the Adhyasa if real Sakshi were not there. Therefore, but we are aware of the Adhyasa. That proves that your Anubhava proves that there is a real Sakshi. There is an Adhyasta Sakshi, no doubt, but there is a real Sakshi also. Shunyasyapi shunyatva siddhau shunyatva siddhau sakshapekshanacha, and Sakshi is required even to prove shunya also. Ultimately, you have to accept, because our Anubhava says that there is Sakshi. Okay, next. Tasmat sakshinopi adhyastatve bhavatyeva tasya avyabhicharitam sarvanubhava rupam satyam swarupam. Sakshino adhyastatvepi. Therefore, even though Sakshi is adhyasta, still it is changeless, eternal, and self-existent. That means Sakshi has two aspects. One is an adhyasta aspect, another is anadhyasta swatasiddha, real aspect. Therefore, satyam swarupam, Sakshi by his nature is satyam, but in his adhyasta form is taken to be, adhyasta means what? Sakshi is taken to be aham pratyaya. Sakshi is taken to be subject. Imposed means taken to be. It is transferred, it is imposed upon the subject. Therefore, people think that Atma is subject alone. See, our Anubhava shows clearly. Atma is subject in the waking state. Atma is subject in the dream state. In deep sleep, there is no Atma because there is no subject. See, this is the mistake. Since Sakshi is taken to be subject, when there is no subject, what happens? Atma is not there. This is what we think. That's why in deep sleep, common man thinks that there is no Atma, because in deep sleep there is no Atma. Not only that, before I was born, what happens? Before I was born, before body was born, Atma did not exist. After the death of the body, Atma will not exist. Why? Why do we think like that? That's because Atma is superimposed upon the body. Since Atma is superimposed upon the body, we equate the Atma with the body. We equate Atma with the body. That means when body is, Atma is. When body was not, before my birth, body was not, we think that I did not exist. After the death of the body, Atma will not exist. That's because we think like this because Atma is identified with the body. Atma is identified with the I notion, Aham notion. Atma is identified with the mind. Atma is identified with the sense organs. Atma is identified with the body. Atma is identified with the world. Why? World exists. We see that world exists. That existence aspect of Atma is superimposed upon the world. Astitvam, the existence, the nature of existence of Atma is superimposed, is found in the world. That's why we see the world is. That's because The existence is superimposed. Okay. But here, the real Atma is always independent of the body, independent of the world, independent of mind, independent of I notion. Because the real Atma is always changeless and real and always existing. Swatasiddham. Aham pratya yadestu sakshitvenaiva siddhe. See, aham pratyayi, the subjecthood, only due to Sakshi subjecthood is known. If the real Sakshi were not there, if Adhyasta Sakshi alone were there, as Purvapakshi told, that is Vyakyanakara. As the Vyakyanakaras say, if the real Sakshi were not there, if Sakshi were only Adhyasta, then you would not know the subject also. Subject also you would not know. But we know that the subject is there, mind is there, body is there because of the Sakshi. Sakshi's existence alone appearing in the I thought. Sakshi's existing is appearing in the I thought, appearing in the mind, appearing in the sense organ, appearing in the body and the world. Since Sakshi is appearing in the I thought appears to be existing. Okay. Since Sakshi is appearing in the mind, mind appears to be existing. Sakshi is appearing, or Sakshi is superimposed upon the sense organs, therefore sense organs appear to be existing. Sakshi is superimposed upon the body, therefore body is appearing to be existing. Then Sakshi is superimposed upon the world, therefore world is appearing to be existing. Okay, this is very clear. The world appears to be existing, body appears to be existing. Okay, mind appears, sense organs appear, I notion appear to be existing because they have borrowed the existence of Sakshi. Sakshi forms the basis of all these things. Therefore, Satya Sakshi is always there. Okay, aham pratyayadestu sakshatvenaiva siddhe. Aham pratyaya is known. So it has borrowed the existence. But aham pratyaya is known to Sakshi. Okay, because in waking state there is an I thought. In deep sleep, in dream, this waking I thought, waking I notion I don't have. I don't have the waking I notion in the dream. The dream I notion is not present in the waking because they replace each other. A waking I notion replaces the dream I notion. The dream I notion replaces the waking I notion because they don't exist simultaneously. Waking I notion and dream I notion, they can't exist simultaneously because they replace each other. They replace each other. This is very clear, isn't it? We are only touching Anubhava. We are not bringing any logic at all. Vedanta is in fact directly pointing out Anubhavas. Pointing out. Continuously you have to pay attention. What is the most difficult thing in Vedanta is only many people are unable to pay attention to the fact where a Shastra is pointing out. Guru is pointing out to certain Anubhava. People are unable to pay attention to it because they lack concentration. They lack purity of mind. So what is required in Vedanta is not Tarka Shastra. You don't need to be expert in Tarka Shastra. You don't need any Tarka Shastra at all. What you need is the purity of mind, concentration of the mind. Antakarana should be pure and there should be sthiratvam of antakarana, ekagrata of antakarana. Mind should have ekagrata, mind should have purity, shuddhi. Antakarana shuddhi, antakarana ekagrata. Shuddhi comes with karma yoga and upasana gives ekagrata. Okay. Therefore, On account of, with the help of this pure mind, a concentrated mind, you listen to Vedanta. Vedanta points out certain deeper anubhavas. It points out certain deeper anubhavas. Wherever it points out, a person, a jignasu, a sadhaka will be ready to see, should be ready to see. It will be easy for him to see. I tell you, Vedanta is very easy. It is complicated because of Tarka Shastra. We have been telling, I have been touching Vedanta Paribhasha, Vedanta Sara. I discussed Vedanta Sara, Vedanta Paribhasha, Sugama. In all my talks, I am touching directly Anubhavanusari Vedanta. Shruti points out and just you see them. Okay. Deeper and deeper Atma you are seeing. That's all. There is no logic involved. The logic means Anumana Pramana, Lakshana. Lakshana Pramanabhyam Vasta Siddhihi. Tarkashastra means two things. One is Lakshana, another is Pramana. We are teaching here neither Lakshana nor Pramana. Note this. Neither Lakshana nor Pramana. Shruti directly points out the Anubhava. And you are with that. That's all. Shruti works in a Shruti way. Adhyarupapavada way. It points out, that's all. Therefore, aham pratyayadestu sakshatvenaiva siddhe, aham pratyayi, that is anatma. The I notion or subject. What is seen through I notion? What is seen through I notion is subject. Subjecthood is seen through I notion. Subjecthood is seen through I notion. Therefore, aham pratyayi. Pratyayi means subject. Aham pratyaya and pratyayi. See, Swamiji is using the word. Bhashyakara also uses aham pratyaya and aham pratyayi. Aham pratyaya is I notion. Then what is aham pratyayi? The subject which is pointed out with the help of I notion. Okay? Which is pointed out by I notion, not by lakshartha, but by vachartha. Okay? What is referred? What is referred by I notion? What is referred by first person is that subjecthood. Okay. Therefore, the subjecthood is known to us. Subjecthood is known to Sakshi. This is important. Subjecthood is known to Sakshi. Because subjecthood is Adhyasa. That what is known through I notion, what is known through, that means the idea you get through I notion. The idea you get through I notion is known to Sakshi. That means Sakshi is witnessing I notion. The subjecthood is witnessed by the Sakshi. Because the I notion or the subjecthood means what? Seeing myself in relationship with object, that's all. As a seer of something, as a knower of something is subjecthood. What is subject? Subject itself is a relative status. I am seeing an object, a particular object, so that a relative subject is called subject. Sakshi is unrelated. Sakshi is Swatasiddha. But if Sakshi becomes related to object, he becomes a subject. See the difference between subject and Sakshi. Subject is related to object. Sakshi is independent of object. This is the most important difference. Sakshi is natural, subject is relative. Okay. Subject depends upon object, Sakshi doesn't depend on object. Sakshi is independent and Swatasiddha. Okay. See, here I am not using any logic. I am only pointing out, that's all. Again and again and again and again I am only pointing out. So, aham pratyayadestu sakshatvenaiva siddhehe vividha vikara bhaktvat. And aham pratyaya or the subject is subject various changes. The subjecthood keeps changing. Sakshi doesn't change. Subjecthood keeps changing. Why? Keeps modifying. It assumes different forms. As a subject, I assume aham pratyaya, I assume antakarana, I assume, what is that? Sense organs, I assume the body, sometimes give up the body, again assume the body. Like this, aham pratyaya assumes various forms. Aham pratyayi, the subject doesn't remain pure subject. Subject continuously assumes the various forms. But Sakshi is changeless. Sakshi is formless and changeless. Okay. तो सुषुप्त्यादौ स्वरूप व्यभिचाराच्च अनृतत्वम. The subject changes first. Waking subject is replaced by dream subject. Okay. Waking subject, three reasons we can say. Waking subject keep assuming the body. Waking subject identifies with the body, identifies with the mind, sometimes with the mind, sometimes with the sense organ, sometimes with the body. So the subject, waking subject continuously identifying, dropping various mind, body, sense organs. Okay, it keeps identifying and dropping. Continuously it happens. And it is replaced by dream subject. Okay, in the dream, waking subject is replaced. In Sushupti, no subject possible. There is no subject. Possible means what? No subject, it's a matter of experience. Subject doesn't exist. Swarupa Vyabhicharat. In Sushupti, it undergoes change. Vyabhichara means change. In Sushupti, Aham Pratyaya ceases to be there. So what ceases to be there? It is only a tentative appearance in waking and dream. But Atma or Sakshi is in all the states. He never misses. He never fails to appear. Continuously. Okay. Eternally exists Sakshi as own. Sakshi exists because it is Sakshi. It doesn't depend upon anything else. It doesn't need anything. Sakshi is all alone and existing. See, Sakshi is all alone and existing. Things may be there, may not be there. If they are there, they get illumined. If they are not there, it reveals that there is nothing. Okay. Therefore, Sushuptadav Vyabhicharat. Therefore, the subjecthood is replaced in the waking and dream state. They mutually replace each other. But in deep sleep, it totally disappears. Vyabhichara means totally disappears. Okay. Up to this, I think we have discussed this long before. I don't know. Have I repeated? I don't know. Anyway, even repetition is good. I think I have, now I am thinking, I have repeated. Up to this, I have taught already. This one paragraph extra, we took 2 or 3 classes, we repeated ansuttade. It looks like that. Doesn't matter. So we will proceed with the next topic. Okay. The one Vivaranakara. Atra kechit prakara antarena anyonya adhyasam samarthayanti. This is important. This helps us to understand Adhyasa better by contrasting with Vyakyanakara's explanation of Adhyasa. Vyakyanakaras explain this Adhyasa differently. Here Vyakyanakara, who is he? Vivaranakara, Prakashatmayati, who wrote commentary on Panchapadika. And because of his Vivarana alone, it became popular and it got the name Vivarana. But Vivarana is good in many points. Many points it is very good. But a few points it goes against Anubhava and it doesn't agree with Bhashya. Okay. Tatra kechit prakara antarena anyonyadhyasam samarthayanti. Okay. How they explain, we will see in the next class. Okay. Ekatara adhyase kilanyatharasya samanyavabhaso anyatarasyaiva visheshavabhasasya syat. Now you see, Tarka Shastra, as I told you, you can see them how complicated. Adhyasa, which we have discussed so far, it is easy to understand because it is in Anubhava. When they ignore Anubhava, try to present logically, how complicated it becomes, we will see in the next class. Okay? Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Tat Sat.